Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I am joined by the amazing team of Pake and Daphne of Run for Your Lives podcast. How you doing today, guys?
Doing great.
Great.
It is awesome to have you guys. I just got done listening to your episode on Little Evil. It was a very fun episode to check out. So, I always try to listen to people before I have them on, and I was like, man, I need to make sure I'm pronouncing these names correctly because I am the worst when it comes to that. So,
mine's interesting, which maybe we'll get into the background of my name a little bit at some point. It's not tied into my movie today, but it's one that could have been a contender. So
yeah. See, now we're built. That's foreshadowing, guys. That's what in the business we call foreshadowing. We're going to talk about that later on in the show. So, but before we talk about why you guys are here, I would like for the people that don't know you to get to know you a little bit. I'll start with you first, Pake. Pake is a podcaster co-hosting two shows. I'm probably going to butcher this for the Podcastica network. Podcastica?
Yeah. Podcastica.
Okay. Strange Indeed, a podcast dedicated to horror, sci-fi, dark TV series found on streaming platforms such as Stranger Things and Mike Flanagan shows, Your Hill House, Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, all those things. And then the other show, Run for Your Lives, which we'll be talking about today with his co-host Daphne. They cover monster movies, creature features, disaster flicks, and other horror films that make you want to run for your lives. And outside of podcasting, because we all do have our day jobs as well, he's a caregiver and AEW wrestling super fan and lover of food and fellowship. So I got to ask you first, thoughts on CM Punk jumping shit back to WWE?
Oh, God. Man, I will try to make this the very truncated version, so I could talk about that for an hour right there in its own. Man, when I was younger, I absolutely loved CM Punk. He was just like a hero to me. Really loved him, and so when everything kind of ended the way it did, and after 7 years, I was stoked to have him back to have him back in the wrestling scene, have him in AEW. Me and Daphne were actually at Double or Nothing 2022, so we got to see him win the title from Hangman, and it was really cool, and I was a huge fan of his. And then it was just all of the background stuff, the backstage stuff. It really soured me on him as a person. I think as far as social issues and just a lot of very his social awareness and things, he's still a really great guy. He's just kind of an a-hole when it comes to dealing with other people, and it kind of soured me on a lot of those kind of things. And so I don't know. I don't watch WWE for my own personal reasons. Again, I don't care for Vince McMahon and stuff. So it's good for him if he's happy there. But at this point, it's I don't miss him as much as I thought he would when he left AEW.
Right. See, I think you said it perfectly. CM Punk, the performer, great. Phil Brooks, the human being, kind of a douchebag.
Yeah.
And I mean, he said it himself. He's not there to make friends. He's there to make money.
Right.
So, I mean, you know what the guy's all about. You know that he's always been lookout for number one. He's going to give you everything he has in the ring, whether it was, Ring of Honor, whether it was WWE, ECW, even, AEW. He's going to give you 100% every time he steps in the squared circle. But as a human being, kind of a douchebag. So, Daphne, I want to talk a little bit about you now. You co-host Run for Your Lives as well as Yellow Jackets, WTF, and the Handmaid's Tale podcast for the Podcastica network. God, I'm so bad at the English language. She is also the co-host for a weekly news podcast for the sport of figure skating called This Week in Skating. Outside of podcasting, she's a sports photographer, trivia queen, and animal lover. So, we know that you guys have a lot going on outside of the podcast. But what got you guys together to start Run for Your Lives?
All right, who wants to take that one?
Well, I can.
I talked a lot about wrestling, which is a tangent. So you can take this one.
I'll take this one. I could also talk about wrestling. I just want to say. So I decided during the pandemic, because I'm a sports photographer and a lot of sports events were not happening. Figure skating is a passion I have. Those events were not taking place, and I was really missing that creative outlet in my life.
Sure.
And I got involved with this podcasting group, which Pake is a part of. And I got encouraged by others in the group to start a podcast. And so I was, getting ready to start a podcast with a different co-host, and it didn't work out. our love of horror didn't come on the same line, meaning basically I loved horror and he didn't.
Makes
wasn't
sense.
wasn't gonna work. So Pake he was scheduled to be on the podcast as a guest, and we went ahead and recorded that episode, and I knew about 10 minutes in that I wanted him to be my co-host, and the rest is history.
Well, that's awesome. And the best thing about all this, guys, is you don't have to go far to find the podcast or their social media links, because I have all their links right down here in the description. So make sure you're subscribing to the podcast on whichever podcasting platform you listen to, and make sure that you're following them on social media so you can become a part of their podcasting family as well, because we don't do what we do if people don't listen. We love it. It's a passion, but we also want to share that passion with the people that are listening. So make sure you're checking out the podcast, subscribing to the podcast. Maybe give it a couple of amazing reviews too. That always helps out.
Yes.
So
It really does.
It really does. Yeah. We
so in
appreciate
order
it.
for you guys to, have a podcast that's based on horror had to start for you somewhere. So now I would like to go back to the past and talk about what got you started in the horror genre, your first horror movie. I started with you first last time, Pake, so I'm going to go with you, Daphne. Your first horror movie was
Dawn of the Dead.
amazing,
1978.
amazing film.
It was a catalyst really for me. It scared me, but I fell in love with the whole undead zombie genre.
Mhm.
And it really solidified what horror means to me, I think. It wasn't that it was the most well done as far as effects and things, but it just gave me a feeling that I wanted to be in that mall. I wanted to be part of that movie. It just seemed like, there was enough fun in it. But horror to me didn't start that easily, because I was actually very afraid of horror movies. It's something that Pake and I've talked about on our podcast before. I was afraid of them for a long time. And my mom just made me watch a making of show.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw it, that was it. I was like, I need to see every horror movie that's out there. I want to watch them all. I think she regrets that decision, because I didn't want to rent anything else. Just that. So,
Well,
yeah.
No, and you're talking about, Dawn of the Dead. And what I love about this movie is, people that bitch about, and you guys, anybody that's heard this podcast before knows, I hate the term woke horror. I hate it. I think it's the dumbest term. I think it's an oxymoron. Horror has had social messages since the very beginning. And Dawn of the Dead, especially, it's a total play on consumerism and, the zombies that come with the consumerism. And Mr. Romero, God rest his soul, had a good way of incorporating social issues into horror movies while making sure he was creating a horror movie first. And this is one of those movies that I still feel like I love the remake. I think that the original is absolutely fantastic. So that's a really good place for your horror love to start. Trust me, we're going to talk a lot about Dawn of the Dead tonight, but I got to ask you as well, Pake. Your first horror movie was?
All right, so mine, I'm 31, so I'm a little like younger in the scheme of a lot of people. So mine seems like, oh my God, has it really been? But it's been, that long since it came out. But I'm going with Jurassic Park, the original Jurassic Park. I mean, I was born in '92, so it like just had come, around. So it's, I didn't watch it super young, but it was definitely like a first foray into it. That or Tremors, but I'm pretty sure it was Jurassic Park. But a lot of that comes from my dad. I'll give him credit because he's not a horror fan. He's not a horror person. So if you want to count Jurassic Park as horror, I think it does loosely count for sure. It's a monster movie at the core. And so my dad was not a horror person, but he definitely, from a young age, put me onto like the cult like sci-fi and like those kind of movies. So like Jurassic Park, Tremors, the original Star Wars trilogy. Like I was raised on those movies, and I thank my dad for that a lot. But man, Jurassic Park was one that scarred me for a bit in my really like young brain. Just again, it's this kind of concept, like, Tremors is like, oh, they're these giant earthworms and they could exist, but with Jurassic Park, it was like, well, dinosaurs definitely existed. They tell us they don't now, but no, there's the science out there. Yeah, no, but it was one of those things, like the T-Rex was definitely scary, but it was the raptors that probably the velociraptors in Jurassic Park probably terrified just generations of children and probably still do today. It was these pack hunters, these clever girls. That you never know. Like the most intense scenes and stuff included the raptors for the most part, and I would watch that movie over and over. But then, like without fail, I don't know why I still kept going back to it, but I would then have nightmares of like me and my family being hunted and chased by raptors, and it would terrify me. I'd wake up and just like sweat, but then I'd want to go back and watch the movie again.
Well, I dare anybody to argue that Jurassic Park is not a horror movie. I mean, I remember when it came out because again, you were young. I feel geriatric now after hearing you explain that. Got to go make sure to get some rice pudding when we're done here to fill me up. But I remember when JP came out, and there was a huge, huge fuss about the fact that Fangoria put it on the cover. And it's just like, how can you argue this? Like, it's a creature feature for sure. The Velociraptors are prototypical slashers in this film. The way they stalk around the kitchen when they're breathing on that window, like it's a total slasher trope, that whole part. So again, I will 100% say Jurassic Park absolutely is a horror movie, and I've thought that my whole life. Real, genuine, scary moments throughout the whole film. So, Daphne, we know that you were young the first time that you had watched Dawn of the Dead, but do you remember which scene it was that affected you the most?
There were a couple scenes. One was in the stairwell when the woman comes out and she sees her husband. He's been turned into a zombie, and she goes to hug him, and then he bites into her shoulder. That I know I screamed. But also Roger, when he's in the truck and he's forgotten something, because he honestly was acting so irrational and erratic at that time. He had to get out and get back in the truck, and when he was getting back he just gets bit, and that was it. Like, I screamed at that too. Yeah. But I loved it because the whole zombie world fascinated me.
And as kids, who didn't think Roger was going to be one of the final guys?
I felt like they were all going to make it.
He was just badass, and you're like, okay, yeah, Roger's safe. He's good. And then obviously you get the most iconic clip of all time of his reanimation. So, as an adult now, if you would have seen that, you'd have been like, oh, that guy's cooked. But as a kid, you're like, yeah, this guy's safe. He's gonna make it. So what about you?
Yeah, he was so nimble. He was so able to do all these things. He was creative and helped them come up with ideas. It was awesome. And then, not Roger. No. It was a big bummer.
Well, for everybody, not just us watching, but everybody in the movie too.
Yeah. They were totally, totally upset. And again, they didn't know everything about how the transformation would take place. So they had, heard things on the radio or seen all the Zeds while they were in the helicopter, but watching or seeing Roger actually come out of the bed, like his green gray face, and then see Peter have to take him out, that was rough.
Yeah, that's I love Ken Foray, so I mean, like, you do have that, but it is a heartbreaking scene to watch. Some two guys that are in love, doesn't have to mean sexual, guys.
Exactly. You can have an intimate friendship.
Yes,
you can,
and they
totally it being that way. Yeah.
Peter totally loved him, and he had to put him down, and it was just, it's a heartbreaking moment. We've all had friends like that we're completely head over heels in love with, and we don't want anything bad to ever happen to that person. Right. So, it's a heartbreaking moment between two guys that genuinely care about each other. So, what about you, Pake? What was the scene from Jurassic Park that affected you the most?
Man, you mentioned one for sure, is the kitchen scene. That is like an iconic set up with Jurassic Park for sure. The tense, like the tension with the kids in there, you know, with Tim and Lex hiding and like this fear. It's like they don't have adults to protect them anymore at this moment, and
Right.
it's just like it's all on their own survival. You know what? They go from one moment where they're like sitting there eating Jello and having time, like, oh, thank we can take a breather, to like, no, we're gonna die at any second if we are not careful and we're not quiet and we don't really think about what we're doing. And so as a kid watching that, like you kind of feel in their shoes a little bit, and it really got to me. It's so tense, and wondering, it's even now, it's like I've seen that movie countless times and I'm still like, how are they going to get out of this, you know? Like, it's great.
But how
And then
funny is it that you talk about, you know, Jurassic Park and Tremors, and they both have the same girl in it? You know what I mean? Like, that's just funny. The creature features, and they both have her in it,
Ariana
and she
Richards
just kills it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ariana Richards, she's just fucking fantastic. I love her to
Yes.
death. And, you know, she was one of my first crushes, man. Her and Rachel Lee Cook. But again, I'm geriatric Pake, so I remember all this stuff.
I wanted to bring up one other one, which again, Tim related as well. It's not necessarily a horror moment, but it kind of is. But just me, I like kind of an empath in some ways, and then like body horror stuff really messes with me. And this is a very minimal version of it, but like any movies with like a hobo with a shotgun, that scene, you know, things like that, where like there's like bone and sockets and things that are involved. Like I have a hard time with it. I will watch it, I enjoy it, but like those are the moments that make me kind of squirm and look away from the screen. Sure. And so a very small version of that with Jurassic Park is Tim climbing the electric fence, and you just know at any second that thing is going to get him. And like, as a kid, I'd have to like leave the room and be like, I'll come back whenever he's fine. Like, I can't put myself through this. Like, knowing he's gonna be fine, I'm like, I just it's like, it's not necessarily like a gory or gruesome body horror, but you just know that like the pain that's going through his body. You're like, I'm good. I don't need that right now.
Where I'll make the argument is that maybe one of the most horror scenes in the movie, you know, because when I think, and again, horror is different for everybody.
Yeah.
That's why I think horror is such a special genre, because it can mean the exact same movie and exact same scenes can mean two completely different things to two completely different people. And that scene, even as a kid, completely filled me with anxiety. And that to me is when I'm scared the most, is when you have a movie that could perfectly capture that feeling of anxiety and bring it on to me. Like you said, as an empath, I'm the same way. I'm feeling what this kid's feeling. And you have that fear of, you know, it's going to turn on, jump off the goddamn fence, get down in his arms. And, you know, when the scene happens, you start hearing the click, and you know, that's a wrap, you know? So, I get it. And I still, to this day, now as a parent, it affects me for a different reason. You know, as a kid, it's like I put myself in the shoes of that kid. Now, as a parent, I put myself in the position of the adults in the films. So to see him, and I'm like, just jump down to my arms, you little bastard, right now. Come on.
Get down here. Yeah.
So both of these movies are special, very, very special. And they both stood the test of time. So, obviously, remakes, requels, sequels, kind of all the rage. And Dawn did get the remake treatment back in 2004, but Daphne, is Dawn of the Dead a movie you would like to see remade today, or maybe done as like a limited series TV show today? Is that something you'd like to see, or do you think they should let a sleeping dog lie?
Okay, so 2004's Dawn, I really enjoyed. I know that there are fans of the original film that are like, no, it's terrible. I appreciated the update. I don't think it needs to be done again in a movie form, but I think I'd be okay with it as a series. I think it could be interesting. I think they could explore some different things that, you know, over the last decade or almost 20 years since they did the remake, I think that there are some different techniques that they could employ. I'd love to see some of the young up and coming horror folks who were involved with the creation of the prosthetics and all the different effects have the opportunity to do this. But as Pake, I think, will agree with me, anytime that you can take and not have as much CGI, but really use the practical stuff, that's what I'd like to see. Because I feel like that could be a true homage to George Romero. he was all about that. That was long before CGI, and everything was done practically. And I would love that. I would like to see, but only done the right way.
Well, I think even a lot of the practical stuff they did in '04 was fantastic. They do not overuse the CGI in 2004.
Mm-mm.
Like the running zombie with the one arm, like that shit is one of the scariest scenes ever to me. And what makes me laugh so hard is there's the people that are like, I don't like that movie because zombies run. Zombies can't run. And I'm like, why? It blows my mind. Because if you watch the original Night of the Living Dead, do zombies run? No. But are they completely brainless? No.
No.
Like they pick up rocks and they bust out headlights. They bust out windows. They try to open the doors. Like they're not just this brainless, mindless, stupid thing in the original Night of the Living Dead. And I know that's not the first zombie movie, but let's be honest, that's the one that coined what zombies are to us.
Yeah. Yes.
And so to sit here and tell me like, oh, I don't like '04 because the zombies are running, to me that's just the most nitpicky little thing. Like I said, are you going to tell me that you don't like zombies that can pick up rocks and throw them through windshields? That you don't like them that pick up bricks and bust out headlights? Because that's what they did in the original Night of the Living Dead.
And that's kind of an evolution of zombie, like
exactly,
really, truly. And I think you can't expect it to be done the way that it was in the late 60s or late 70s. That was great for its time, but if you're going to remake it, don't make a cookie cutter remake of it. Update it and make it so that fans of that genre will want to go and watch it.
Right.
And I was excited for it because they could run, because I thought this is going to be a different world than what we saw in George A. Romero's world. You know, we're going to get to see something different. And I was excited about it. I was glad they didn't say, well, we're going to have a Fran character. We're going to have a Peter character. We're going to have all these people. No. That's
already been done.
Do it your way.
Mm-hmm.
Do it the Zack Snyder way, not the George A. Romero if he was Zack Snyder. Like, no, just do it the right way.
And what I love about this movie is you kind of summed up the perfect way that I've always talked about CGI. For me, practical effects are your mashed potatoes, and CGI is your salt and pepper. You know, you want to season your practical effects a little bit. You want to enhance them. But if you use too much, your potatoes are going to taste like shit. If you use too much CGI, your film's going to look like shit.
We might use that on our podcast in the future. I mean, like, we may reference you from time to time now.
Yeah, we will.
Really good.
Oh, I think we will for sure.
And I have given this to you. And I think that because a lot of horror fans feel that way. We don't mind CGI if it looks good. The best CGI in the world is when you don't even realize it's there. That's the best CGI, when it's used just to spice up your flavor a little bit. So I'm glad that you guys feel that same way, because growing up in the 80s, because I'm geriatric Pake, you really get a love and admiration for practical effects. So, but back to you, Pake, with Jurassic Park, obviously this is a big franchise now. And I know there's a lot of great movies in this franchise. I know a lot of people poo-poo some of these movies. I think there's a lot of very, very good movies throughout this whole franchise. So of all the Jurassic Park movies, which one would you say is your personal favorite?
Probably still the first one, the original. Just it holds up absolutely the best. You talk about the practical effects with the slightest amount of, little flavoring, to the fact that this movie came out 30 plus years ago and it still looks perfect. There's nothing to complain about. You can't complain about, oh, that looks dumb now, or that T-Rex is a real creature. It still
does not look dated at all.
I love her.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's just absolutely perfect. Now I really like Jurassic. Like, I don't complain about the other movies. Like, I know like a lot of people hated 3. I love 3. I love that movie. It's got some really fun stuff in it. And even like the newer ones, like Jurassic World was really great as kind of like a reboot, recontinuation of stuff. Dominion, too many, ladles in the pot, too many things going on. However, for the nostalgia part of it, I could enjoy it for what it was. Popcorn flick, don't take it too seriously. It's a fun watch.
Right.
So I'm not gonna sit and shit talk down on a lot of these movies, because they're great in their own ways, and there's a lot of like love going into them. But yeah, the first one still to this day, just mean there's nothing you can complain about.
Right.
It's a perfect movie.
And what I love about the newer movies, they still look fucking great too. Like there's a lot of
Mhm.
scenes in there where you're just like, wow, that
Yeah.
looks great. And where Jurassic Park really excelled, how I just talked about good CGIs when you don't even notice it's there. They do so many practical things in the OG Jurassic Park that are genius.
Mhm.
I'm a big behind the scenes guy. I love to watch
Yeah.
behind the scenes and stuff. And one of my favorite moments of Jurassic Park, and I think a lot of people that have watched this will know what I'm going to talk about, when you have the cup of water in the Jeep and you have the ripples, they kept trying and trying to make that happen, and they couldn't make it happen. They couldn't make it happen. And a set assistant was like, I have an idea. And they took a guitar string and they ran it through the bottom. And the way that it was rippling was just them plucking this guitar string. And that's what was causing your perfect ripple in the water. And I'm just like, that's genius. Like that is so smart, and it looks one of the most memorable moments of the whole movie. The ripples in the water as the T-Rex is coming. Like what an amazing practical thing to do. So huge proponent of what they did in that movie. So I've had an amazing time talking to you guys about your first horror movie. But here for a second, I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball at you. And Pake, you're not going to get to think about this. Daphne, you're going to get to be a cheater, pumpkin eater, and you're going to have time to think about this. But
Okay.
we talked about your guys' first horror movie and what those mean to you. But now my little buddy Ghostface is here, and he has a question for you.
All right.
What's your favorite scary movie, Pake?
Ooh.
What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
Man, it's a tough one, and I will give like an honorable mention for sure to something because I teased it early on anyway. But no, I think, which is funny because given Daphne's answer, my favorite movie, like horror movie of all time, is Dawn of the Dead, the 2004 Zack Snyder remake. It's one that I watched on repeat. Like I would like play, like, I don't know if you ever remember, there was a like a game, like a board game, figure game, whatever. It was like, was it just called Zombies? I don't know, but like you would like lay out tiles of a town as you went through, like picking up supplies and fighting off hordes of zombies as they came. And I would sit down with friends all night and we would play that game on the floor in the living room with Dawn of the Dead 2004 playing. And then when the movie ended, we'd start it back over with commentary. And then we'd start it back over without, and then back with, and then we would just let it run all night while we were doing that. That movie, great to me. It's funny because I did not see the 78 version until way later, like actually like just like a year or two ago. I just like hadn't been able to find it and hadn't, and so plug to Run for Your Lives. As I do. That's actually, we do like a double dip on our podcast sometimes where we kind of pick two, like a movie and then a remake of the movie or like different versions of the movie. We've done it a couple times, and one of those that we did was Dawn of the Dead. We covered 78, and then the next week we released our episode on 2004, and we kind of compared and contrasted them and talked about them. And it was cool because like that was kind of like, well, our like favorite movies are like the same movie but from different years, and so it was really cool to talk about that. But yeah, that one, again, a lot of the practical effects and just stuff that is incredibly done. That cast is, it's
immaculate.
So it's my favorite. As much as me and Zack Snyder maybe not on the same wavelength on a lot of things lately, but he hit gold. He struck gold with that movie. But then I will give a little honorable mention, of course, another one that my dad really put me onto, Tremors. I'm a huge Tremors fanatic. I love it. There actually was a Tremors Fest earlier this year in Santa Fe, New Mexico, with like a lot of the cast, like all of the directors stuff. Ron Underwood was there, and like S.S. Wilson, and then even like Don Michael Paul, the director of the newer like straight to DVD movies. Michael Gross was there himself. Burt Gummer had a lot of the cast, and I actually was there. I got to go and meet all of them and talk with them and get pictures and watch the movies. It was crazy watching the first Tremors in a theater with Michael Gross sitting like 2 rows in front of me. We'll remember that forever. But yeah, so that's a big part of me. And so my name actually comes from that. So there's where that foreshadowing comes from. I always wondered where my name came from, not directly from Tremors, but my mother was a huge Reba McEntire fan. And so I've grown up loving Reba just because of my mom. She reminds me of her a lot. And of course, so I asked him where my name come from, and my mom was that big of a fan that Reba's brother which his real name is not Pake, but that was a stage name he put on and released like 2 albums under. And but his performance, he went by Pake McIntyre, and that is where my mother found that name. And so it's still on my list. If there's another Tremors Fest or like conventions or something, I'm on the hunt to try to meet Reba McEntire at some point in my life, just so I can like relay that little thing and have that moment, because I think that would be cool. But
I love how
Tremors
when
is a
you're
big
born,
part of my life, too.
your mom was like, it's either going to be Pake or Fancy. Haven't decided yet. My mom was a huge Reba fan too, man. So much love to you for that. I think that's why my mom got me to watch Tremors for the first time, because it had Reba and Kevin
Nice.
Bacon. You know, so
Yeah.
I totally get where you're coming from there. Well, Daphne, you've had enough time. I'm gonna let you ask. Give me a second, man. Damn. So you've gotten to think, Daphne, but now Ghostface wants to ask you, what's your favorite scary movie, Daphne? What is
Okay.
your favorite horror movie?
All right. So it's hilarious, but Dawn of the Dead 1978. It's my first, it's my favorite. But you guys have been throwing so much love to probably my favorite movie of all time, which is Jurassic Park. I love dinosaurs. I have loved dinosaurs for such a long time that when that movie came out, it blew my mind. And I love all the films for what they bring, each something a little bit different. The original, there's something special about Stan Winston, everything he brought to the table in that one. So I don't know if I consider Jurassic Park a horror movie. I consider it more of like a creature feature, maybe creature monster-ish. But yeah, Dawn of the Dead 1978 has stuck with me, and I have a lot to thank it for.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, we may not be here today if it wasn't for Dawn of the Dead or Jurassic Park. So that's why I love talking about our first horror movies so much. So now, before I let you guys go, I always bounce back to the same question. We're going to go back to your first horror movies, and I'm going to start with you first this time, Daphne. What we're going to do is rank your first horror movie on a skull count. Now, we're not ranking these movies on acting, production, score, direction. We're not going to be critics. What we're doing here, Daphne, is ranking Dawn of the Dead. Got a little flip there. We're going to rank Dawn of the Dead on how much it affected you on your first viewing. So 0 skulls being not effective, 5 being extremely effective. You can use half and quarter skulls anywhere in the middle. Daphne, what would your ranking of Dawn of the Dead be?
I have to give it like a straight up highest mark it can get, because it started something really big. It scared me, but it also pulled me in and made me want to know more and watch more. I actually saw Dawn before I ever saw Night of the Living Dead. Like, Dawn was the first one. And yeah, I have to give it like the highest it possibly can get, because it changed a lot for me. Even like 30 years later, it changed a lot for me. Even though it came out in 78, as far as when I watched it, was about 30 years ago. So
yeah. See, a lot of us geriatrics remember when it came out. So
30 or 40 years ago, I'm not sure. Yeah. I guess it was longer.
we're talking about Jurassic Park now, and how much this movie affected you. So same thing, not on being a critic, but how much Jurassic Park affected you. Pake, what would your ranking of Jurassic Park be, 0 to 5?
It feels like a cop-out almost to say just 5 right across the board. But, and I've kind of been preparing this to think about it, because again, like you said, going back and listening to stuff. So I've listened and watched like previous stuff you've done too. So I kind of knew this was coming at the end, and I'm like, still. It's like, do I want to just give it 5? Because that's the gut feeling. That's where I want to go. It's like,
right,
pull it down just to like where it doesn't feel like I'm just like pandering to it too much. But like, what reasons would I have for docking any points? As I mentioned before, I said it's a perfect movie. It's still perfection. And again, we're not, like you said, we're not ranking it based on production or effects or things like that, but just how it affected me. But I even said, I mean, as a kid, holding my breath on my 7th watch with Tim and Lex in that kitchen, still, it's got to be a 5. Yeah.
See, and I agree. It doesn't have to be the perfect movie to be your perfect movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I don't think I'll ever see a movie that I enjoy more than House 1986. I think that'll always be my favorite horror movie. That was
William
my
Cat.
first.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. Yep.
yeah.
I remember
That was
that was quite a movie. We haven't covered it, Pake. I think we have to.
We might have to
well, you
cover it.
should,
Who
you
knows?
should
We
because it
might need a
just
special
slip it
guest
in
for
there,
that
like,
one.
yo, we're
So
doing this episode because it's Sledgehammer Horror's favorite horror movie. It was Sledgehammer Horror's first horror movie, so we got to do it to honor our buddy Sledge. So, please do it because I'd love your guys' opinions on that. So,
Well, you know what? As Pake said, I think we need to have a special guest on for that one.
So, man, people here, you are, because I was going to tell you, it was like, yeah, I mean, thanks for having us on. I'm saying that a little earlier. We're not completely wrapped up, but we are more than willing. Yeah, we'd love to have you on. And
yeah,
so we let guests pick the movie, but it sounds like you did. So
yeah,
I'm telling you right now. Imagine how long you could have talked about the CM Punk situation. Multiply that by 52,000,
right.
and that's how long I could
Okay.
talk about House for. So,
and Peg,
to the
you
point-
haven't seen that, have you?
I haven't. That one's new to
No.
me. So
it's
that's
free on
a lot
YouTube.
of
It's
thing
on
on our
Amazon
podcast
Prime.
is a lot of
Please
older
check it out.
movies that have been around a long time.
Yeah.
I just like hadn't got around to them. So then I'm like, well, I'm still trying to keep up with stuff. So Run for Your Lives has become a great way to force me to watch a bunch of movies that I've wanted to see or needed to see for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Well, I mean, House is so important to me. I live in Michigan. I was born and raised in Michigan, big Detroit guy. A couple years ago, me and my family took a vacation out to California, and I literally cried, like sitting out in front of the house. Like I FaceTimed my grandma, like I was showing her, like, hey, we're at the house. Like that was like a bucket list moment for me, like being in front of that house. Like I felt so much inside of my body, like that was just like an incredible moment. And I mean, it sounds corny and cliche, but like I literally was so overwhelmed, I cried out in front of that house. Like my kids were like, it's a house. I was like, and you're grounded, get back in the car. But no, like again, if you guys do need a guest, I would absolutely be honored to come on and talk about that movie
definitely.
with you guys.
Definitely.
And I know that I said it at the beginning, guys, but we're at the end of the third act. The credits are about to roll and the curtain's about to drop. But before that happens, I want to remind you, I have all the links for their podcast as well as for their social medias down in the description. So make sure you're becoming a part of that family as well. Pake, Daphne, please don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It helps our channel more than you know. And follow Sledgehammer Horror on social media. Our links are in the description as well. But until next time, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.